The research report task is now available on Blackboard in the assessments section within the report folder. You will need to download both the task sheet and the Excel data file, as well as the criteria sheet, which must be attached to your report when submitted. The aim of this assessment task is to give you the opportunity to apply the data analysis skills that you are learning to some real-life data. The topic this semester is BHP. Your task sheet gives you some background information. You may also wish to do some general background reading to gain a better understanding of the stock exchange in Australia, as well as economic conditions during the period being considered. A Google search will very quickly provide some places to look for more info. In relation to the data you will be analysing, there is one set of data consisting of 5 columns. The data can be found in an Excel file available for download near the task sheet on Blackboard. The dataset contains the weekly BHP closing share prices for the period from the 11th of January 1999 to the 31st of December 2012. This data has been sourced from Yahoo Finance. The dataset includes the following columns: week ending, All Ordinaries Index, BHP closing price, All Ordinaries return, and BHP return. As a research officer, you have been asked to summarise, analyse and interpret the data. The task sheet includes a specific list of tasks which must go into the report. If you are not familiar with any of the terminology used in this assessment, we would recommend that you undertake some general reading on this topic. Information can be found on the Australian Stock Exchange website. As well, there are many online finance dictionaries which can be searched to define terms. Okay, so let's start by looking at the overall structure of the report which you will need to prepare. There will be more research report help recordings, and so we will have the chance to talk about more statistical aspects, but for the moment it is important to have an understanding of the report we are trying to prepare. It is important that your report is structured as a business report and appropriately formatted. You should therefore include a title page. When you submit your report to Assignment Minder, you will need to complete an Assignment Minder cover sheet to attach to your folder, and so this will include more detail. As such, the title page only needs to include a report title and your name and student number, but feel free to be a bit creative with the title page. The table of contents goes after the title page. So in terms of the report itself, where do we start? Well, all good reports should have an introduction, and so this is where we begin. The introduction is your opportunity to set the scene for the report, and so the first few sentences are likely to be in relation to the general topic, maybe some background or historical information, followed by a sentence to explain why we are interested in the topic, and therefore what the objective of the report is. Please keep in mind that nowhere in the task sheet have you been asked to say whether or not you would recommend investing in BHP shares, but rather your aim is to develop an understanding of BHP performance in what we might refer to as a review of BHP returns. The introduction should also include some specific details about the data that you'll be analysing, as well as a brief outline of the report structure to follow. A concluding sentence is always a good way to finish off a section. Overall, your introduction should be a small paragraph. Generally, when we start to work with real data, we would need to consider the possible impact of outliers. For this report, however, we would like you to use the data as provided, and so you do not need to make a decision as to whether or not to remove any outliers. We can now go into the specific tasks and therefore the main sections of this report. A good place to begin is with the analysis of the weekly closing prices. While ultimately it is up to you to decide how to best order the tasks within the report, one structure idea would be to complete the main sections in the same order as listed in the task sheet. It is important to think about the overall structure of the report and if it flows logically. So for section 2, we have analysis of the weekly closing prices. The idea is still to start with an introduction sentence and to set the scene for this section. Then you are ready to reference Figure 1. You would include your chart of this data, and then below it you can discuss the features as well as then linking those features to real life. For example, you should think about how the prices changed over the period and whether there are any specific periods where the price reached a peak or a low or rapidly changed, and any economic conditions that may help to explain the trends. Please keep in mind that the presentation of the data into a chart is therefore only the first part of this section. You have to be able to communicate the features as well as interpreting them in relation to real life. Presenting the data is not sufficient for this report. Analysis and interpretation must be included. Following the analysis of the prices, we can go on to consider returns, and so section 3. While price information is interesting when we look at a stock, it is better to use returns to examine overall performance. By using returns rather than prices, we can see the percentage change of the stock. You will therefore need to consider the distribution of the BHP weekly returns in isolation. This is therefore one variable analysis in which we are examining just column E. You will need to consider how these returns may relate to the market generally, but this will be completed within the following section. Here, we just want to look at the returns in isolation. Again, start with an introduction sentence to introduce this section, followed by a reference to your chart. Below, you would note the key features. Generally, a good summary of features will include things like the average, lowest value, highest value, variation and shape. It is also useful to note the modal class. The features then need to be put in context and linked to real life. The final main section is where we can examine the relationship, if any, between the performance of BHP and the market generally. As a measure of general market performance, we will look at returns on the All Ordinaries Index. The same structure template can then be used for this section. For this section, just don't forget that you are also looking to say whether BHP performance is linked to that of the market, and so this type of comment can be a good concluding sentence here. The overall final section will be a conclusion, so your section 5. As conclusions should be drawn within each section of the report as part of the analysis and interpretation, the final conclusion section will only be fairly small and is really just an opportunity to quickly recap on the major findings so as to remind the reader what they should be taking away from the report. No recommendations are required. Just a few final things. An appendix isn't required for this report. All charts referred to should be included within the report itself, and any tables used to generate charts do not need to be included. If you find you have something extra that you really want to include as an appendix, that is okay, but please keep in mind that the report should be able to be read without looking to any appendices, and so it is vital that all of your findings and conclusions go inside the report itself. Okay, so having now had the chance to think about the report structure, the idea is that you could create a Word document and start adding in the components, such as headings, ready for when you start to create charts to paste from Excel. Also, starting the Word document early gives a good place to store any notes that you may think of as you begin processing the data. One option is to jot down ideas and initial findings so that later you can turn them into sentences. Finally, please note that while I have used the basic tasks to label each of the sections in the PowerPoint slide that you can see, it is important that you think about what section headings to use for sections 2, 3 and 4.